Ladies and gentlemen, today we're infiltrating the largest cult hiding in plain sight. Now, okay, this video is really interesting because in the thumbnail it had like Shane Yun, and I've never seen that play before, but I've seen a bunch of ads for it, and I'm really curious about what this is. So let's take a watch.
This is me after spending the last year
Look
of
at
my life infiltrating what many believe is the largest and most organized cult in the world.
Whoa,
They gather in parks like this one all across the globe, from New
is that
York
Tai Chi?
to Tokyo,
That's
standing
good, right?
silently, meditating. And here I am moving with them, eyes closed, while a voice emits from a nearby speaker, guiding us in our practice. But here's the thing, this isn't a yoga. What's really happening here goes way beyond meditation. It's a belief system, one I now believe to be based on identity, fear, and obedience.
As far as they're concerned, Lee created the universe. And if he said to you, see that white wall over there, that white wall isn't white, it's black, they would go, oh yes, right, yes, of course.
There's no way they're that delusional.
Whatever he said goes. He was infallible. He had superhuman powers. His word was the word of God.
This is a global spiritual movement, one tied to an alleged media empire, a billion-dollar dance company, and allegations so serious that multiple governments have investigated them. But to understand how I got here, what it was like to join, and why I spent hundreds of hours searching through personal emails, government documents, and archived websites, leading me to an outcome that I haven't seen anybody else talk about. We have to go back to my first interactions with this organization.
Okay. Yeah, guys, I'm poor. I don't have YouTube Premium, and I don't put in an ad blocker because I feel like it's wrong, you know. So okay.
In April of 2024, I went on my dream trip to Japan, and it was everything I could have hoped for and more.
Wait, so this was like really recent, in April of 2024? Wow.
Beautiful landscapes, kind people, and the best food I have ever eaten. And also, two distinct moments where I had a camera shoved in my face. Both times happened in the same city, the tourist trap known as Asakusa, but they were very different experiences.
I've never heard of that place, like Asakusa. The places I always hear are just like Tokyo and like the capital. And like Kyoto, and like the places that were bombed during World War II, but I feel like you don't really hear about a lot of other places in Japan. Maybe I'm not in the Japanese culture, I guess, enough.
One of these incidents was on the very last day of my trip when I was wearing sweatpants and an oversized hoodie getting ready for my flight back home. I was at the only place open at the time, Shochikuen Cafe, which only serves pizza and muffins, and I left a Google review to get a free cookie. Great place, no complaints. But as I was sitting there eating my pizza and my muffin and my cookie, two guys ran into the cafe holding new style cameras and a waiver that asked me to sign, and I happily did with no questions asked.
Well, that's
Next
weird.
thing I know, they had the camera pointed at my face, asking me about how much I loved eating pizza. I'm pretty sure it was for one of those Japanese television shows where the hosts are in glittery boxes on the upper left and right corner, laughing at the foreigners shoving their face full of pizza in Japan. But anyway, the other time I had a camera shoved in my face wasn't quite as fun. I was walking near a bus stop on the way back to my hotel when I noticed the street was closed off. There were some people there holding cameras pointing down the street, but I didn't see anything. There was no music. There was no
scene or something,
accident.
right?
There was nothing there. So I approached this woman here and whipped out my handy dandy translate app to ask what they were waiting on. And she replied pretty simply, Pareto, which I didn't speak very good Japanese at the moment, but I was smart enough to piece that one together. And you know, I like parades, so I sat there and I waited to see what was going to happen. But what I saw was pretty far from what I was expecting. As people marched down the street, I saw this sign with the words, Falun Dafa, a name that sounded familiar, but I couldn't quite place. At least
familiar? Man, maybe I'm just like not in Japanese culture at all. Like, does that sound familiar to any of you guys? It's kind of, I don't know. Maybe I'm just not good with names that I've never heard that before ever. Also, the marching band's kind of cool. I was in a marching band.
Not yet. While we were watching the parade, we were approached a few different times and given flyers, as you can see here. Most of the signs were seemingly pleading for mercy. They read out as a cry for help, bringing attention to what looked like some kind of human rights violation. And right about when I was getting ready to leave, a guy approached me holding a clipboard, and I saw that attached to it was one of those little field mics. He asked me where I was from, and I said the US, and he lit up a little bit, and he was like, oh, that's cool, like you guys have freedom of religion there. Isn't that a good thing? I responded to him like, yeah, I guess that's cool. Sure.
Sure,
and he immediately hit me back with, well, where I'm from, In China, we don't.
In
Don't you
China?
think that's a bad thing?
Oh,
And that's
okay.
where the red flag started to go off for me a little bit. It was around that time I realized he was holding a little camera in his offhand pointing in my direction, and I was wondering why. Why was he asking me these questions?
Yeah,
and
it's kinda
why
weird.
was he recording me? So I quickly and kind of awkwardly ended the conversation and continued the journey back to my hotel, which is where I started to piece it together. That parade was for a group called Fallen Dafa, a name that I realized sounded familiar to me because years ago in college, I had a professor on an off day show me a documentary from this group called Falun Gong, a documentary that in itself was pretty tense. It supposedly showed groups of these marginalized people being exploited in Chinese.
Whoa, wait, okay. That's what this is going to relate to? Also, Fallen Dauphin, Fallen Gong, are those different groups? Are they the opposite? I don't know. Like, maybe I'll say. But if you guys know, let me know.
Labor camps that were allegedly violating these people's basic human rights as they were taking their limbs and selling them to the highest bidder. Essentially, the documentary alleged forced organ harvesting. And obviously, on remembering all of this, I went down a bit of a Google rabbit hole. I went into this hoping to learn about the plight of a people I wasn't familiar with, but I left with much bigger questions. Some of the largest of those questions being, why do they own so many media outlets globally? Why do they run a traveling dance show? And probably most importantly, is this a cult?
Okay. Oh. This game's not a cult. When's the 6th one coming out, guys? Come on.
The Chinese government calls Falun Gong an evil cult. These Chinese practitioners now in Los Angeles, California, insist that it's a peaceful, spiritual exercise.
Well, you've probably heard of Falun Gong as a persecuted spiritual movement.
I have
and
not.
It really is. The Chinese Communist Party has done terrible things to it. But you probably haven't heard that Falun Gong has also become one of the most determined backers of Donald Trump.
Here in Congress, and I'm a member of the United States Congress in the House right back here behind us, I've spent a lot of time working to strengthen human rights throughout Asia. And I've also been a longtime supporter of the Falun Gong and your right to practice in China or anywhere else for that matter.
Okay.
This paper gets wilder, with an editorial encouraging people who get sick with the virus to cure themselves by sincerely renouncing the Chinese Communist Party. That claim makes a lot more sense, though, when you realize this newspaper sprung out of Falun Gong, a Chinese spiritual practice that involves body movements and meditation.
Okay, but I'm confused. How is Falun Gong like evil? It doesn't seem evil, right? It doesn't seem like a bad thing. I'm confused.
All right, tell us why folks here in the Bay Area would benefit from a show like this.
Well, Shenyun is a show that must be seen. Its entertainment and production values are at the top. And you can go online to see that many distinguished audience members have said that Shenyun is the best.
The show may seem like an innocent performance, embracing and celebrating Chinese traditions, but underneath lies a demented cult involved in much more sinister practices.
How?
Last year, the New York Times ran a series of in-depth investigative articles alleging abuse and coercion of students at the organization's Dragon Springs campus in Deer Park, New York.
A former Shenyun dancer has accused the...
Wait, in the US too? So like this is like a global problem.
dance troupe of human trafficking.
A few months after I got back from Japan, I couldn't stop thinking about that group and that parade. So I kept digging and trying to find as much information as I could, but I kept running into the same issue over and over again.
What is
contradictory information, conspiracies, and no real first-person insight. After all, if they are a cult, there's only so much I can learn from the outside without full integration.
Oh no.
I needed to learn how to join, and
Oh,
that's
no.
what became my next goal. During my research, I learned of a traveling show called Shen Yun, a show that I never personally heard of, probably due to growing up in rural northern Michigan, but it's advertised everywhere.
It
I'm
is.
sure that you watching this have been exposed to their billboards.
No, I've seen their ads, and I've lived in like a, well, at the time when I saw the ads, I lived in like some little rural town just over in Arizona. Like, and they had ads just on TV, so like, I don't know, they put ads everywhere, it seems like.
Their pamphlets or ads in the newspaper before. It's a performance that claims to show the beauty of China before communism, a performance that was coming to Portland in just a few.
Well, plus, I don't know, maybe you guys got in the YouTube ads for it too, you know? Maybe we'll get one during this video, that'd be hilarious.
Months. And for me, it wasn't just a performance, it was the next step to getting inside, my golden ticket to talk.
Hold on, this is insane. Could you imagine, like, joining a cult, like, knowingly? What? I mean, like, it's not worth the views, man, right? Why do this? Like, he has some, like, amazing personal inspiration to, like, I don't know, uncover information. And I mean, I don't know, that's why this video is going to be amazing, right?
To real practitioners. A golden ticket that cost me $110, which could have been much better spent on another Lemard. But with tickets in hand, my plan was pretty simple. What? Get inside, talk to practitioners, see what they really believe, and if it seems
they're not going to tell you, right?
Into the cookout. But even knowing everything I did at this point, I was not ready for what was about to happen.
Oh my God, there's a Shen Yun billboard right there.
Is that the before communism?
Yeah, China before communism.
Get one unlimited Cox Mobile line.
Hold on, guys. I'm sorry. I double ads. Please don't get double ads, guys. I'm sorry.
Union is an interesting experience, to say the least. They don't allow any filming, and their copyright lawyers are insane. Even fair use review videos have gotten struck down, so I'm going to be very cautious about what I include and what I show in this segment. Meaning I'm going to mostly have to describe my experience, but I do have footage from outside the show, both before and after, as well as some undercover interviews that we're going to get into shortly. Cool. The show was at the Schnitzer, one of the fancier venues in Portland, usually home to operas, symphonies, and things
makes sense.
So everyone there was very well dressed. In the lobby, there were a few tables selling expensive goods and books like you would expect at this kind of performance, as well as a photo booth. And here's a photo of me at that photo booth, a little underdressed for the event. Interestingly, there were a lot of local politicians there being interviewed like VIPs at a show about a spiritual movement that is banned in China. I thought it was a little...
Wait, so this is all about a spiritual movement that's banned in China. But why are they're going global, but it's banned in China, and that's like their whole spiel? Why don't they just go to other countries then and not practice in China, right? Because the government there is not going to change. If it did, it would have to come from inside of it, not from outside of it. And all the politicians and stuff going to this, I mean, that makes sense. They probably got invited specifically from, like, members from Shenyun, you know, because they want them there to be able to interview them and, you know, like, get their good publicity, right? I've seen interviews in the ads where, like, you know, it's all super, like, you know, they're only getting the people saying, oh, it's so great, it's amazing, you need to see it, you know, it's there's nobody saying it's bad. So I don't know, I mean, that stuff's just kind of expected, right? That's just normal publicity type stuff.
Weird, and it is a little weird, but it'll make sense later. Politicians weren't the only ones being interviewed, though. There was a bunch of regular, everyday people being interviewed with little field mics like the one I was interviewed with in Japan. And this time, I actually wanted to talk to them, but for some reason, nobody wanted to talk to me. And not wanting to miss out on the show, I eventually just sat in my seat, hoping to have some conversations with people around me, which I did. There were a few people like me who were just here to see if it was a cult, and a few others who were there for various reasons.
Well, I mean, okay, when I saw ads for this thing, I never thought it was a cult. I just thought it was like some art thing. Some, like, you know, because like people do that. They have like their traveling art group. You know, they go do a tour on a play or something. I thought that's what this was. But other people going to see if it's a cult? Does everybody know about this thing except me?
Mainly because they saw the overabundance of advertising within the city.
How did you hear about it?
How do you not hear about it?
Yeah, just advertising everywhere.
Advertisement.
There's one woman sitting next to me who told me that her daughter bought her the tickets to the show because she loved traditional dances. And after the show, I have to admit, I felt a little bad for her because the show is crazy. Like, don't get me wrong, the show has its highlights with fun and impressive acrobatics and choreography, but something about it was just uncanny. Even just looking at the program beforehand, you would notice that some of these performances have an inspiration that's a little out there. One called Unprecedented Crime, which details the brutal story of a young couple on their wedding day being torn apart and put into prison camps where the guy is beaten relentlessly while his eyes are literally stolen from his head and sold, all in ballet form. I'm not kidding, that was part of the actual program, but it doesn't even end there, because after his eyes are plucked out of his head, he's thrown back onto the streets where he encounters Master Li, their spiritual guru, their leader, who instantly grows his eyes back by simply placing his palm on his forehead. This giant patented screen that's behind him.
Okay, I don't know about this one, guys. This is insane. Okay, so it's like a story, but it's also kind of not, right? It's like advertising their spiritual leader person, then I guess, right? That's really strange. Okay. I'm ready. I'm excited.
The stage that allows performers to jump behind stage and in PS2 graphics appear back on that giant screen. And they really use that thing. Around half the performances started with somebody down on their luck and eventually transcending into this like phoenix shooting lightning out of their hands. Which honestly was pretty cool, but was a little intense on the messaging front, especially because right before the intermission, about halfway through the show, there was a 10-minute ballad about how evolution could not possibly be real. That performance led to about 30% of the audience just kind of leaving, which was fantastic for me.
Whoa, wait, that's insane. Them saying evolution isn't real, and then it's like a third of the audience just leaves. That's crazy. I kind of would like see one of these in person. That sounds insane. Okay.
It allowed me to actually talk to practitioners at the tables. It was my first real chance to ask how I can go deeper. I spoke to a person who introduced me to something called NTD, or New Tang Dynasty. She said it was like YouTube. It's not. It's a TV network tied directly to Falun Dafa, just like Shen Yun. I asked her a couple of questions, but she mostly avoided them, and I realized I wasn't going to get her off script, at least not in public. She ended up handing me a few different pamphlets, as well as a QR code for this, GajinWorld.com, which is apparently just kind of the same thing as New Tang Dynasty. So when I realized I wasn't going to get much more out of her, I moved on to the table selling the books. Well, more accurately, one book in a bunch of different styles, specifically this book, the Zon Fallon. I tried to have a conversation with people selling this book, and as you'll hear, that went slightly better.
Hey besties.
All right.
As you've probably heard,
I haven't heard, guys. I'm sorry. Wait 1 second. Fixing. Oh, sorry, guys. Bonk. Oh, okay, I'm back.
It's powered by.
Cool.
Okay, so you dancers, they do Falun Dafa practice, which is like mind body exercises. So the body part, they do the 5 exercises. That's the body with the body cultivation. And for the mind, they read a book, which is called Zhuanfang.
Okay.
The book originally written in Chinese, but translated into over 40 languages. We have English, Spanish, and Vietnamese here, along with Chinese. So this is a book they read to cultivate, so they can practice. I mean, they can perform at a high level.
And that's the book that is talked about.
No, but
yeah.
Huh.
Why was it bad?
Well, because I think the Chinese communist regime, communism is like atheism. They don't believe in any Buddha or anything. So this is about.
Hold on, is communism doesn't do they? I don't think communism imbues religion, right? Or anti-religion. Do they? What religion is China mostly, actually? I have no clue. I'm very uneducated in this area. Hold on. I'm going to search because I'm very curious. Let's see. What religion is China mostly? Non-religious or practice Buddhism and Taoism with Confucianism. This lady just straight up lied. Huh? Okay. Interesting. Okay. That means he's in a cult, so he probably doesn't have total contact with reality, right? That's how it works. Isn't that strange, though?
Cultivation, higher beings and moral values, which the government, the communist regime does not like.
Okay.
So they are we're all atheists. We should all be in this world.
They straight up didn't say that. Okay. All right. It's just because they're against your religion doesn't mean they're atheist.
I think about anything higher, so they ban the book, and then they actually persecute the practitioners in China. I did that since 1999, so it's been 20-some years, still ongoing. So that's what we try to bring back to the China before communism.
They're trying to bring it back to China, but they're doing it outside of China. That makes no sense to me, right? Am I the only one not following this? If you're gonna make a change to China, you need to be in China, doing it. They're totally cut off from the world. You doing a play here is not gonna make your religion come back to China, right? What?
Okay.
So communism does not like the
Yeah, gotcha.
One important thing I want to point out before we move on is the mention of her being a volunteer. We found out that nobody besides the dancers and the venue staff were getting paid, at least allegedly. And when we asked her about it, this is what she had to say.
I'm local. I don't know anything.
Yeah. So are there like why are you volunteering?
Oh,
Like part of doing the exercise?
Yeah, because I mean I feel because I grew up in China, and when I first heard about this, I'm like, it was about like self-immolation. They made a whole video about it. That was the first time I heard about it, and I was like a pretty hostile to the show. Even I tell people not to come here for years. Then suddenly one day I realized I was wrong. So I'm like, I have to make it up by helping people to realize what Shen Yun is really
That's
about.
kind of strange.
So that's why I'm here.
I don't know, man. That just seems like such a weird, like, fishy answer. Like, there's got to be some... It sounds like she's forced when she's saying that. You know what I mean? Maybe I'm crazy, but I don't know. Okay. Okay. Sure. Whatever you say.
Within I have friends who wants to go. I said, don't go. Don't. They burn themselves to go to heaven. But that was really a book, a lie. So I read the book myself. And it says, we need a body to count.
Look at they put the book on a golden pedestal with their like monk people carrying it. This is insane.
You cannot kill yourself. The killing is already a thing. Killing yourself is also a thing. So they don't do any of that. But the communist regime has been like lying about this show, about them for so many years. And I feel like it's my responsibility to come and help clarify everything.
Now, obviously, there's a lot to unpack here. First of all, she's a volunteer and she does this all for free, which personally couldn't be me. And second, she's volunteering because she once heard of an event that ended in self-immolation. Thought it was horrible.
Hold on. Self-immolation? Setting yourself on fire, especially as a protest against something. That's really interesting. You know, I've never heard that word before either. We're learning. What's a new step today, guys?
And put the blame on practitioners of Falun Gong, but years later feels so guilty about it that she now dedicates her entire life to correcting that misguided blame. And the way to make up for it is by volunteering at a dance show, which, like, what? Anyway, let's talk about that event that she was referencing. She was referencing one of the most infamous and debated incidents tied to Falun Gong. On January 23rd, 2001, the Chinese New Year's Eve, 5 people lit themselves on fire in Tiananmen Square. One of them, a 12-year-old girl. Another, and the only one to perish on the scene, was that girl's mother. The Chinese government alleged that there were Falun Gong practitioners trying to reach transcendence, trying to reach enlightenment. Beijing's deputy mayor even said, cults exist in every country. The way governments deal with them differs, but resistance against cults is common practice. A statement that Falun Gong wholeheartedly disagreed with. They said it was a hoax, a setup. They alleged it was propaganda by the CCP, orchestrated to turn the public opinion against them and justify mass arrests. After all, this event happened just 2 years after a 1999 protest that I will talk about in depth later on that allegedly triggered the prosecution of Falun Gong.
Like, I don't know, just with the information I've been given so far, it makes sense to me that China would ban their book after people are lighting themselves on fire. Like, you know what I mean? That makes sense so far. So I don't think China's done anything wrong here. I'm sure we'll learn more as it goes on, but this is so strange. This is all new to me. It's insane.
Since this event, people involved with Falun Gong have made several documentaries, news outlets, and even YouTube channels to push that narrative. A narrative that they've been pretty consistent about since day one, as seen in this article written just a few months after the incident from the Washington Post. Quote, Falun Gong leaders insist that the 5 people could not have been members of their movement, which promotes a blend of Buddhism, Taoism, and traditional Chinese breathing exercises. But here's the thing, that narrative is a little shaky. Almost every source I found covering the incident, every deep dive, every video, all footage has come from Falun Gong practitioners or people connected to Falun Gong. One of the most visible examples, China Uncensored, a YouTube channel with over 2 million subscribers.
Hi, welcome to China Uncensored. I'm your host, Chris Chappell. Now, if there's one thing I hate more than anything else, it's facts.
The host, Chris, pushes a very specific worldview. one that is anti-CCP and pro-Falun Dafa to an audience that is already primed to believe the worst about China. He says he's independent, but until 2020, his videos were cut up and broadcast on NTD, the same platform that they gave me the QR code.
Interesting. Okay, so they're in cahoots.
Chris used to work for the Epoch Times. Epoch, or Epoch Times, is a far-right news publication that is pretty much just QAnon. They have a website, but their main hustle are these newspapers. And they seem to be doing quite well. After all, they have Dave Ramsey writing financial advice columns. Now look, I'm not saying it's impossible a government would do something as dramatic as staging those burnings. History is full of worse things. But what I am saying is that this event, that self-immolation event, is more than just a piece of history. It's a narrative weapon that both sides use to push their own agendas.
Absolutely.
And that was the moment she was talking about when she said,
They made a whole video about it. That was the first time I heard about it.
Now, while that story is wild, believe it or not, it's not the most interesting thing I believe she said during this interaction. The thing that really stuck with me was that she was a volunteer. It's kind of concerning because according to, well, everyone.
Oh.
Every dream has a...
I don't see why it really matters that she's a volunteer, though, right? What a long ad. Oh, well, come on, no skip. It is almost Christmas, guys. Have you gotten presents yet? Okay, hold on.
Civil lawsuit over labor violations, shady finances, underage performers, and even possible visa fraud, which is bad. But hey, in this economy, you take what you can get. It could be pretty good to be an underage performer because by the time you need your entry-level job, you'll already have 10 years of experience. But since I'm not 14 or a professional dancer, I don't think I was getting an invite anytime soon. So if I really wanted to understand what was going on inside of this movement, if it was really a cult or just a misunderstood spiritual group, I was going to have to go deeper. And surprisingly, she was happy to help me do that. I got an invite to the local park to practice with them.
So you'll find people here that do exercises at the park Sunday.
So I can go on Sunday.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Yes.
With my invite to the park locked in and new book in hand, I felt super prepared to begin my journey of immersion. So early Sunday morning, I made my way to the park where the local practitioners practice. This kind of...
You gotta hide it. You gotta hide it.
Just up there. I wanted to really understand what they believe from the inside. And here's why. So much of what we hear about cults is about fear and manipulation from the top. But what about from the bottom? What makes people follow? What makes people trust?
Well, everybody's keeping each other in check, right? I mean, you know, the person next to you, they have some sort of like mega fear that if they, you know, don't like do exactly what they're supposed to, they're going to get killed, right? By God or their leader or some other person, whatever. And like, you know, it's that sort of fear that like just channels all the way up like in this giant, like, I don't know, giant like loop that keeps everybody locked in, right?
Trust a system like this with their health, their relationships, or even their kids. I figured if I played the part, followed the motions, and did the exercises that I could really understand their perspective and their ideology. And I do feel like after going to the park a few times, I did begin to understand at least where they were coming from. I also want to say that the first time I went, and really every time I went, they were very kind to me.
Of course.
I never felt unwelcomed, even if I felt awkward for being undercover, essentially.
I think some young people, they will say, you guys are talk. And they fear social media, like a YouTuber, some influencer perhaps they to spread fake, fake lies about them. You might see some on TikTok or somewhere, but behind it is Chinese Communist Party. Fake content.
I love that. Yes, he put himself in the background. That's funny.
From all directions, from the media, social media, mainstream media.
The woman who I assumed to be the lead for the local area interrupted her own practice to allow us up there and show us in detail what to do. And as I followed along, she explained how important it was to not mess up the form when doing these exercises.
Both men and women are opposite, so I'm right hand on the top, or your left top. Yeah, well, then the foot touch each other, and then you say, turn over shape, all shape, put friend of your look at the.
Now I'm just kind of curious, what is the sort of point of this like meditation or like physical like thing, right? Like, what's the point of it? What does it do? I don't know. Maybe I'll get into it.
1 inch below belly button.
And I gotta say, I was a little surprised at how sore I was after doing these exercises every single time. It doesn't really look like a lot, but when you're holding your arms like this for 7 straight minutes, your shoulders get a little bit tired. But honestly, that part wasn't even that bad. The worst part was definitely the voice coming out of the speaker telling us how and when to move. It was just so loud and repetitive. Shout out to my teacher, though, because after the lesson, she happily sat down with me and told me all about what she believed and what got her into Falun Gong in the first place.
Oh. There's a lot of ads here, guys. Good thing you guys don't have to watch videos or ads when you watch my videos, right? Because we only have a whole, let's see, 0 subscriber. Maybe someday we'll have 1. I'll just subscribe on my alt account. Yeah. Sorry, funny joke. Ad break. Okay.
I have been since 1996. Yeah, I just went back to China. So this practice came out in 1992, and so I went back to China to visit my family. And just a friend gave me a book. She just said, "Hey, this is really good. You want to take a look?" So I thought, "Wow, it's really good," because I didn't have a disease or anything else here, and I thought, "Wow, this is really good."
And while I do think it's interesting and a little alarming that she told me she didn't have a disease when she joined, which is definitely a gateway for people who are in unfortunate situations to get caught up in spiritual movements or alternative medicines. I want to focus more on what she took away from this book. She mentioned this being a good way to live. And here's what she means. At least
there's like morals inside of the book, right? Hopefully this guy read the book.
On the surface.
Truthfulness, compassion, follow.
These are the core principles of their belief.
I'm going to go back. I want to see them. I mean, okay, Zen, true, honest, truth, real, truthfulness. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, right? That's good. Sean, be kind, benevolent. Interesting word choice. Having compassion, being good, goodness. Those are all good. That's Sean. Ren, self-discipline, self-restraint, patience, enduring hardship, forgiving, tolerant. Those are all good things. But I feel like, I know these cults always mask their sort of stuff like that, right? I'm just curious, benevolent specifically. Like, doesn't benevolent mean like resolve? Let's see. According to Oxford, well-meaning and kindly. Okay. Well-meaning and kindly. Okay, so they're all just kind of synonyms. Interesting. Okay.
These are the core principles of their belief. These are their core tenets. According to their website, these 3 principles serve as a guide for Falun Gong practitioners in their daily lives. That is, each day they work to cultivate these principles
not a bad
in
thing
their
with
own
that, right?
character,
Seems
becoming
good.
more true, kind, and forbearing people. These are also the 3 words that are explicitly spelled out in the book I bought at Shenyun, the Zon Fallen, which my great teacher did recommend I read, but she mentioned that I might not like everything I read on the first go and to just finish the full book before casting judgment.
And the main thing I would encourage is to read the book from the beginning to the end.
Okay.
You will know the whole thing. Instead of, oh, this piece I really agree. This piece, oh, I thought. This piece maybe wrong. Don't try to put out the notion, or develop notion that, from beginning to end, you'll see what the whole thing is about.
Which, okay, don't judge a book by its cover, but I do think it's fair to judge a book by its contents. And let me tell you a little bit about the contents of that book before I continue with what happened in the park. When I first started to read it, I'm not gonna lie, I probably fell asleep within 15 minutes, and I do not fall asleep easily. It is one of the driest, most egotistical things I have ever read, and that's saying something, being that I've read a lot of
How is it egotistical
that people usually skip over. But I'm not gonna stand here and say that some of these passages
this is supposed to be like their Bible, right? So like, how is it egotistical? Please go more detail. Please go more detail.
Aren't absolute bangers like this one. In ordinary human society, you compete with others for fame and personal gain. You cannot sleep or eat well, and your body is in very bad shape.
Okay.
When your body is seen from another dimension, the bones are all black.
What?
With this body, it is impossible for you not to have any reactions when it is all purified at once. Thus, you will have reactions. Some people will throw up and have loose bowels. Many practitioners from different places have raised this issue previously in their experience reports.
Really?
Teacher, after attending your class, I was looking for a toilet all the way home.
Okay.
Like, that is some compelling stuff. It reminds me of the Barnes & Noble phenomenon that makes their customers annihilate their toilets. If you don't know about that, you should look it up.
What? Okay. I'm learning so much here, guys. This is insane. This is the most I've been educated in like the last like 5 years. This is crazy.
But really, a lot of this book boils down to Li Hongzi's ego and his belief that he is supernatural and can cure people's illnesses, but won't, because it is not the right thing to do. Because if he did, he would become way too attached to their lives. He also has an interesting fixation on how aliens allegedly gave humanity technology and unnatural...
What? Okay, hold on. Isn't this just every cult leader, right? Every cult leader says they're connected to God or whatever. Or like they're God themselves and they have all these powers and just people believe him, and that's why they have to do the things the person says. And you know, they print out these books that seem so official and makes everybody believe. It's this kind of is just a standard copy paste cult, it seems like, you know.
Urges in order to corrupt them. He really, really likes aliens, which is of course why this cultivation and meditation is necessary to bring us back to the purity that we had before the aliens corrupted us. And of course, this wouldn't be a cult if they didn't believe in an inevitable universal apocalypse. So before we continue with what happened,
machine learning is advancing.
Oh man, there's so many ads here, guys. Why am I getting an ADP ad? What is this even gonna mean? Am I gonna go get sponsored by ADP? Do I need them to fix my business that I don't have? That's so weird.
I want to talk a little bit more about Li Hongzi and the Wheel of Dharma.
The
Li was
Wheel
born
of
July
Dharma?
7th, 1951 in Gungzhuling, a city in the Jilin province of northeastern China. And look, depending on who you're hearing this from, Li either had a completely average childhood where he grew up at best a mediocre trumpet player, or he was secretly trained from the age of 4 by Buddhist and Taoist masters in remote mountains developing powers as if he was Goku.
That's sick! Okay, like, sorry, excuse me. Ugh, that was awful. I'm gonna take a mint. Growing up though, like I wish my childhood was like that. You know what I mean? I would always watch that on movies or shows and stuff, and just like, you know, there's always the cool characters in there getting to do awesome stuff, and it was like, man, I wish I could be like that. You know, how come no aliens came into my house and said, we need you to destroy our enemies, so we're gonna train you, and you're gonna, you know, like. How come it not happen to me, you know? How come it happens to these people? I just need to write a book and set it happen to me and then I'm good.
Early teens, he had reached a level of enlightenment that surpassed everyone ever. Like he completely unlocked the matrix, which if that was true, I don't know why he would continue to work as a grain clerk, but I guess you got to make a living somehow. By 1992, Li appears in the public eye as this enlightened guru with his new spiritual system that he calls Falun Gong that was later rebranded into Falun Dafa. This new movement caught on pretty quickly with him claiming it could purify your karma and help you transcend into new forms. And that's where it starts to get really weird. Because in 1994, he drops the Zan Falun, the book that we were talking about a little bit earlier. It's essentially the Bible of this belief.
Wait, classic. They write the Bible after the religion's successful to make money. I've looked into a few other cults and they always do the same sort of thing. So copy paste. Like, how can you write the book after the thing already happened? It's all made up. It's fiction.
Which, by the way, if you're wondering what the Falun even is, it is this. Li claims that when you read his book or follow his exercises, he spiritually implants it in your body where it spins constantly, absorbing energy from the universe and removing black karma from your soul. And I don't know, maybe I just had too much black energy for it to successfully install, because according to Li Hongzi himself in a conference in Houston in October of 1996, he said this while responding to a student's question. This was the student's question. Different races have different heavenly kingdoms. Why don't black people from Africa have any? To which he responded, black people too have divine beings that created them. It's just that they forgot them rather early. But I don't want to preach. That's probably not why it didn't work. It probably didn't work because also, according to Li Hongzi, in that same press conference, he said, quote, after mixing blood, people no longer have their correspondence to the divine beings of the heavens. Because essentially, after mixing races, you're no longer allowed into these heavenly kingdoms because, according to him, each race...
It's insane. It's insane how people can just make this stuff up. And then people believe it. Isn't it diabolical? Like, who believes this sort of stuff? You know, like, and then it's just like, you know, look at any religion, you know, one you're following or something, for example. And if you dig deep enough, there's some crazy stuff in there, you know. I don't want to get in the whole debate of, you know, whether whatever's true, right? But I mean, these people think that's true. And every religion thinks their own thing's true. It's just so strange, isn't it? It's so strange.
As their own heavenly kingdom. But despite how wild that might sound,
they're all just different levels of crazy. That's really what it is, right?
To me or you, Falun Gong blew up, and I'm talking blew up, like 7 to 40 million followers worldwide. Which, wide gap, I know, but if you ask a practitioner, they will say they have upwards of 100 million plus.
92 to 99, attracted 100 million people.
Oh.
Personally, based on everything I've found, I think it's somewhere more realistically between like 3 and 7 million people. But in 1996, Li Hongzhi left China.
That's still a lot. Like, hold on. I'm just curious. What are the other like big religions? You know, let's see. Let's see, top 10. Hold on, I'm slow typing. Religions by population. There we go. I'm not trusting AI because AI and Google's always wrong. Okay. Here we go. Christianity is number 1. Okay, but that's a bunch of things, guys. Come on. Can we get specific? Okay, here we go. Hold on. Okay. Catholicism, Protestantism, Orthodoxy, Sunni Islam, Shia Islam, Vaishnavism, the type of Hinduism. No religion's the next with 1.1 billion followers. Then Buddhism, Theravada, Mahaya are the big ones. Chinese folk religion is the next after that with 400 million. And they said they were at 100 million. These guys aren't even close to the top 10. They're like scraping the floor. Man, okay. Interesting. Cool. Little fun fact. All right, back to it.
Moved to the Big Apple, New York City, where he began to travel and share his teachings, hence the lecture from Houston I just referenced. 1996 also happens to be the year that my teacher from the park first learned about Falun Gong. Both 1998 and 1999 were both pretty fundamental years in the foundation of what Falun Gong eventually became.
Is the leader still alive or did he get killed? Because normally these cult leaders get killed.
In February of 1998, Li was granted permanent resident status by the U.S. government and began founding a place known as Dragon Springs, which today is a training center for Shenyun Performing Arts, Feiten College, and Feiten.
Oh, that's creepy. Hold on. It's going to get into some dark stuff with that, isn't it? Eek.
Academy of the Arts. It also, since 2000, has served as Li's permanent residence and headquarters.
He's not dead.
I could go on and on about it, but I don't really want to drag on. By 1999, Falun Gong had exploded in popularity in China, mainly via word of mouth.
There's practice. People just go to public park, do together, and every morning and night. So that's the whole.
Every morning and night.
There's no, some media or some channels, all word of mouth.
Oh, come on.
Because there are all kinds of exercise in China for like people understand why they endure. You endure pain.
Okay.
Why do you have to, when you have conflict, human conflict.
But at the same time, tensions began to grow between Falun Gong and the CCP. Tension that grew into what became a protest that triggered the initial crackdown on Falun Gong, which is the persecution that she'd mentioned. On April 25th, 1999, 10 years and 10 days after those infamous events in Beijing, around 10,000 Falun Gong practitioners showed up outside of Zhongnanhai, which is kind of like the CCP's White House, only 500 yards from the square. The purpose of that protest was multifaceted. In part, it was to showcase a non-violent plea to end the harassment coming from state media. And it was very much a reaction to the arrest of 45 Falun Gong practitioners in Taichung, who were protesting anti-Falun Gong publications. And this did make national news, as seen here in this 1999 article from The Guardian, which described the event as a cult protest in the heart of Beijing. And similarly, this is very much how the CCP saw this event, a show of force, a cult at the gates. But in truth, the day of, not much happened. Zhu Rongji, the then premier of China, personally met with a group of representatives from the protests, and seemingly everything went well. The protest was mostly over by nightfall, and the 45 people arrested in Tianjin were actually released just a few days later.
Good.
So if that's the case, why was this seen as such a pivotal moment in the history of Falun Gong?
Right.
Well, because on July 2nd, 1999, the Chinese government officially banned the practice of Falun Gong, labeling it as a cult.
When I was there, last time I was there, it's the 98.
Okay, hold on.
Before the persecution.
If they labeled it as a cult, there's got to be some deeper stuff in there, right? There's got to be like a bunch of layers. They're not going to call it a cult. Maybe China's different, but like, certainly they must have investigated, right? They must have found some bad stuff. Must have.
Tons of people in that town.
Yeah.
Like this. I don't need to know anybody yet over there, but I just joined them. So, but persecution started, lots of people being arrested, and people have to go underground.
Oh, okay.
But in China, even you tell people about Falun Gong, you might get reported to the police. You get arrested. You just say a little bit. I go Falun Gong, and they will call police, arrest you. It's that kind of thing. But for me, since the persecution, I never went back to, and I would say it's a form of persecution too. My youngest son never left China, and before we always make our older sons back in every year.
Interesting.
This led to mass arrests and an unbelievable amount of propaganda from both Falun Gong and the CCP.
Sure.
Some of the details of that prosecution and things that Falun Gong is alleging that the CCP is committing are insane. From forced labor camps all the way to systemic organ harvesting accusations.
Hold on.
And that's
is that the government saying?
That Falun Gong is alleging that the CCP is committing are insane.
They're saying that China's doing these things.
Insane. From forced labor camps all the way to systemic organ harvesting accusations. And that's something that I'm going to dive into in depth in just a little bit.
What did the government say they did, though? What did the government say they did?
But just know that when my teacher was talking about the persecution, this is what she's referencing, which got me thinking. There's so much to this story and so much I've already been exposed to. After all, when I was in the park, everything was coming to me raw, unseasoned. I had no real chance to research it. But after going a couple of different times and doing research on the organization and talking to other members from other cities, I felt I had a ton of pieces, but not a full picture.
Sure.
Like, what was so appealing about this organization? Why do people stay in it? And how is it all connected? I needed context, real insight. So I did two things. The first was reaching out to my old professor, the one who introduced me to these topics in the first place.
Cool.
I sent her an email asking for an interview as well as additional resources. And second, I turned to the most academic, trustworthy, and peer-reviewed source on the internet.
What is it?
Reddit. Which I know, but literally the day that I searched, I found this. An ex-Falun Gong cult survivor, Shen Yun organizer, Epoch Times global marketing director, who recently did an interview for the New York Times. Like, how could I ask for a better match? So I slid into his DMs and asked for an official on-camera interview. And at that point, all I could do was wait.
He's gonna say no, right?
Take 50% off Christmas,
come on. Okay, these Christmas, they're not even a sale, man. Like, the prices are so marked up. It's not a sale. It's not a sale. Also, you know the economy's bad when you're getting a Christmas ad before Christmas for 50% off. Because they just want you to spend money on them before you spend your money on something else. That's why they're giving you 50% off now. Sheesh.
And I didn't have to wait very long because the very next day, my old professor responded to me. And while I'm grateful that she did, she mostly ignored my request for an interview, instead opting to send me a whole flood of links. All of these links were sourced from Falun Gong affiliated websites. Most of them are just different pages on the site called Falun Info. One of these links, though, in particular stood out to me. It was from a documentary called...
And okay, I'm just gonna say, W professor right there, you know? It's like, a lot of professors are just kind of like lazy and scumbags. But like, this person actually like cared enough to help like an old student. Isn't it? That's awesome. That's awesome. Like, man, props.
Letter from Masanjia. The premise of that film in particular is really interesting. A woman from Oregon, shout out the crib, buys a Halloween decoration from Kmart. And as she unboxes the loot, she allegedly finds an allegedly real handwritten note that came from a Chinese labor camp.
Come on.
The pretty rough conditions there. The letter, which was a combination of English and Chinese, but mostly English, allegedly came from a guy named Sun Yi, a Falun Gong practitioner who was imprisoned in China. This dude was apparently arrested in 2008 and allegedly wrote about 20 SOS letters during his time in this labor camp.
Interesting.
And after his release from said labor camp in 2010,
okay, it's maybe believable. Let's see.
He apparently bypassed China's Great Firewall or Shield project to find an article about his letter that he wrote in a Kmart in Oregon. And then just 2 years after that, Leon Lee, a Canadian filmmaker, apparently reached out to Yi to do an entire documentary about the labor camp that he was just released from. Like, I love an underdog story, but that seems a little far-fetched, especially when you consider that Leon Lee's entire film career has been about organ harvesting. That's not an exaggeration, that's not hyperbole. Every single film that he has directed alleges that people are getting their organs plucked out like a game of Operation, which to me implies one of two things. Either this is a desperate and repetitive call for help into the void because no one's really listening, which I really don't think is the case because half of these are just Hallmark level dramatizations that are not journalistic in nature, or it is simply propaganda. And at the moment, I'm inclined to believe the latter because most Falun Dafa associated media is a mix of half-truths and blatant propaganda, all for the purpose of pushing a specific narrative, which in the global West is a pretty easy thing to get away with.
Yeah, definitely.
Most Americans misunderstand China entirely. Most people conflate the CCP with all of China or believe in a Black Mirror-style social credit system that is grossly over-exaggerated. For example, there was a blatantly untrue narrative about park benches having spikes in them if you don't continue to pay, which is why I believe films like this are so effective at pushing these narratives. While I'm grateful to my old teacher for providing these resources, I didn't ultimately learn anything new about the movement. Because other than the film I mentioned, most of her links were just Falun Dafa associated websites, most of which feature quotes from other Falun Dafa websites, politicians, and the European Parliament, or more specifically, a certain member of the European Parliament, who I will briefly touch on a little later. And for the record, I did reach out to almost every single politician who has a public statement about Falun Dafa, but none of them wanted to comment at this time. I felt a bit stuck, like I wasn't really going to get to the core of this story. I mean, I've talked to a lot of Falun Gong practitioners at this point, but all of them kind of just repeat the same thing.
So
Tell
weird.
Me to do the exercises, read the book.
Like, I feel like that's the strange part about this. Normally, with, I don't know, cults, isn't there normally an easier way to get, like, a higher level up, or, like, to the top? Like, just, I don't know, broadly thinking, right? The way this is structured, there's all the people. There's the one who, like, organizes the event at the parks and stuff, whatever. But those people who organize the events need to report to someone, right? And, like, so that person would know some more information. And then there's, like, a committee of people coordinating all the people at the parks. Or, but maybe the way this is all structured, it's all just so old and repetitive that they don't have to give them anything new. So, like, but there still must be some connection to be able to, like, go up. I don't know. We'll see what he says.
And try to fight for human rights. But there's a bigger picture here. One I didn't feel like I was going to be able to fully understand until I saw a notification pop up on Reddit. Jaya, a person who allegedly had been in Falun Gong for over 10 years, who ran Shen Yun in the UK, who was the global market lead for the Epoch
There you go. This is big.
Times, responded to my DM. He agreed to go on camera and share his story. And what you're about to see is an edited down version of a 2.5 hour long interview that I did with Jaya. If you want to see the full thing uncut, you can do so.
I just gotta say, this guy is amazing. He is the props, like, nice job. This is amazing.
My Patreon. Before we get fully into it though, I want to make something clear that Jaya's thoughts are his own. They're not necessarily reflective of mine, and certainly not any accusation towards the more serious topics that we talk about, especially since he's not been deeply involved in the organization since about 2011. That being said,
nothing is off the table.
Yeah.
It needs to be known.
Oh, man. I don't have a business. I don't need this. I can't skip it, man. I swear YouTube knows when you're watching and you want to skip because they don't give you a skip button. Release GTA 6 already. Okay.
Now, Jai's life hasn't exactly been ordinary, as he'll explain. Before Falun Gong, he'd lived through not one, but 3 cults.
So my name's Jai Mangalam Gibson. I was born in England into a...
Poor guy got sucked into 3 of them. You know, there's like a thing where if you're like, one sort of thing happens to you, you're more likely to get, like, for it to happen to you again. I feel like that's this poor guy.
A cult called the Fourth Way. It didn't actually start off as a cult, but ended up becoming a cult, and it's still going. Its base of operations is in West Virginia, America.
Can we stop all the cults? It's awful. Like, we need to free up people. I don't know how we need to, like, organize this, but we need to stop all cults. It's awful.
America. It's called the Claymont Society. I went to school there. In West Virginia when I was around 10 and 11. I left home at 17. I had a sort of a mental breakdown at school. Going to school was causing me so much anxiety and stress that my parents thought it would be best that I leave. They sent me to India to live with my brother, who was living over there.
Brother?
And still lives over there.
What? How? You have a brother in India? Huh?
Okay. And I spent some time with him. There was a very bad scene where I was going to high school, and they were worried that I was getting involved with that, which I was. And after India, I came back to London and went to art college.
The old patterns followed him as well as new dangers as he joined yet another group.
I dropped out of that again because of drug use, and also the course was rubbish. I left that. I was looking for work, and I came across this other cult called Friends of the Western Buddhist Order, which my brother had been involved in, which is how he ended up in India. You're sort of cajoled into whether you want it or not. So that was a pretty ugly cult. I escaped that quite narrowly.
And a bit later on, when he was starting to get back on his feet, he ran into yet another rather controversial organization.
And then I came across the Scientology stuff. They went for free personality tests. And I thought,
hey, that's cool.
Well, you know, as someone who's struggling to not be socially inept.
It's so sad that they target people like that, you know? That's why they give them free personality tests. Isn't that insane? That is so awful. So evil.
I thought, oh, that might be quite useful. So I went and did the personality test, and they said, oh, you've got a very high IQ. I went into their headquarters. They had a cinema in the basement. They had a TV studio.
That's pretty
sick. This building was like 7 floors high.
Wow.
It was massive. Everyone was wearing like Navy uniforms.
Whoa.
It was weird. They were like, they had the caps and the, you know, like
space cadets.
Someone looked like admirals or some you know, like,
yeah.
I was like, what the F is this? And they were like, oh, this is the Sea Org. This is like the elite unit.
Ooh.
And they travel around on a massive ship. So anyway, if there's one thing I hate, it's uniforms. And I was like, if I had to be a part of this, I'd have to wear this stupid uniform. Yeah, it looked really, really culty. And at the end of the session, they all stood up and clapped at a bust. There was a bust of L. Ron Hubbard. And they all turned towards him and clapped.
Oh.
I was like, oh, no, I'm not doing this.
And the real thing that got him to separate from these organizations, well, besides the uniforms, was the amount of money that they were trying to get from him. This led to him leaving it all behind and moving to New Zealand, where he partied, snowboarded, bungee jumped, traveled the world, and fell in love. And he was doing fine, straight chilling until he returned to London. Understandably, though, by the time he encountered Falun Gong, he was already pretty skeptical of the whole thing. But something about this group, maybe it was the lack of uniforms, felt different. One pretty big factor in his involvement was how he was introduced.
I was on holiday. I came back to the UK, and my dad had stopped smoking and stopped drinking, and that just really surprised me. And I was like, what? Because I'd been trying to get him to give up smoking for years.
Yeah.
He was 65 at this point, and I said, what made you stop, Dad? And he said, well, it's this. He said, do you remember that Qigong practice I started off a couple of years ago? And I said, yeah, I came along to some exercises. I said it looked quite nice. And he said, oh, it's really powerful, Jack. It's really powerful.
Okay.
And I said, oh. And he said, yeah, it's helped me stop drinking and stop smoking.
Wow.
And I said, what's that called? And he said, oh, it's Falun Gong. And he said, oh, yeah, right, yeah, all right, I remember that. Because I'd gone to a few sessions with him, and it really seemed very benign, quite enjoyable, and held the promise of a healthy body and how to be a better person. My dad was quite clear about what he wanted to reach enlightenment. That was always Dad's goal throughout his entire life. However, was just happy being able to operate in society as a normal human being.
Yeah.
That's not a total, you know, like I knew that I was. And so I thought, this is powerful, I'm going to join him.
This marked the beginning of something bigger than he had ever thought possible.
And as I read the book, I was like, some of the things that I thought are quite shocking. You know, I was like, whoa, he's really confident of himself here. But I enjoyed the exercises, I enjoyed the community. There was all kinds of people. There wasn't just Chinese, there was Eastern Europeans, British, Scottish, English, you know, like it was like a melting pot. And it really did seem like something different. You know, it didn't have any temples, it didn't have any priests, there were no, you know, you didn't have to answer anyone, there were no uniforms, which is something that I particularly liked. It was just purely exercises. And
oh man, again, Intel. What? I don't need a processor right now. Please.
In April 1999, Falun Gong practitioners in China held a peaceful protest outside Zhongnan High, which is a CCP government building in Beijing, one of the prominent ones.
That protest you just mentioned is the same one that we covered earlier. And he believes it not only was the beginning of the crackdown on Falun Gong, but also the beginning of the shift in the focus of the practice.
So the CCP cracked down on Falun Gong and said, no, we're banning you. Jiang Zemin, the leader of China at the time, instigated a brutal crackdown. And you know, this is one thing I want to make clear. Falun Gong is a cult, right? And it is full of nice people that want to do nice things, but they get brainwashed. So that doesn't mitigate the fact that they're a cult and that what they were doing in China was illegal.
What were they doing in China? What were they doing? Tell us. Okay, people following being brainwashed. That doesn't make it a cult. It only becomes a cult when it's like something negative, right? Right? That it's doing something bad. What were they doing? What was the bad thing?
Legal by China's laws. The CCP do persecute them, and brutally, right? So those things are true. You know, for a long time, a lot of people sort of said, "Wow, Falun Gong is being persecuted by CCP. It must be good." So the crackdown came, and then everything changed. Everything became political. Everything became human rights based. And so my dad and I became the first Falun Gong practitioners in the world to protest outside the Chinese embassy.
That's cool.
That kind of sparked off a movement, and now that protest site outside the Chinese embassy is manned 24/7.
Oh.
Literally every hour of every day, there's someone meditating outside the Chinese embassy.
So how did you get involved with Epoch?
Well, so what happened was when the persecution started, there was our little group, maybe 20 of us.
Yeah.
But
okay. I mean, come on, bigger picture though. If this is a cult, how is it benefiting the leader? What is the leader getting out of all this stuff that's like making him like personally enriched? Or how is it helping the upper class of leaders in this cult? Like, it's got to be money or power or like something like that. That's what makes this a cult. This doesn't seem like, I mean, sure, it's weird with the brainwashing and everything, but that's not like culty. You know what I mean?
It was like dozens of groups all over London, right? There was a software engineer called John Tans. He was the one that started up the Epoch Times.
Okay.
My first job in London was designing movie posters for big movies. These two practitioners in New York said, "Hey, look, we're thinking of starting a print edition English here in New York." They were like, "Hey, Jack, can you help us create a layout?"
That's
blah, blah, blah. So I did that. We strategized about how we would create this newspaper, and I actually said in the end, it shouldn't be a newspaper. It should be a magazine, because then we can make profit from day one. We can have lengthy articles, and we can be an expert on China. So they put together our proposal, and that was put towards Li Hongzhu, and he said, no, it has to be a newspaper. It has to be a daily newspaper, and it has to be mainstream.
Now, this is actually a pretty big claim, because Li and Falun Gong, for the most part, deny that he has any involvement with the Epoch Times. And I want to point out something that Jaya provided me. He gave me this big document, a collection of emails, files, photos, and different things from his time during his involvement with Falun Gong. In Jaya's primer for the file, he wrote, quote, "Despite its claims opposing this fact, the Epoch Times was created and is run by Falun Gong. I myself was involved in its creation of the UK version in 2000. There is hard evidence of Li Hongzhi directly guiding the newspaper. For details, read the Fa teaching given at the Epoch Times meeting from October 17th, 2009. Which, funny enough, from what I can tell, is true. It's no longer linked on their website, but it's still a live page I was able to locate and verify, and appears to be Li giving an inspirational speech to the staff of the Epoch Times, which included a rather interesting section you could pause the video on and read for yourself. And from there, he continued to work with the Epoch Times on and off for about a year. And during the video...
Okay, of course I realized there's one other factor. I'm sorry, I'm dyslexic, guys. I might read words wrong. I was trying to go slow to make sure I didn't read that word right. Okay, that makes us different from an ordinary company. Ordinary companies provide financial compensation right when you start, and a person's livelihood depends on it. So, one has to listen to others and pull in a salary, and not heeding others isn't an option. For the moment, suppose we set aside the historic responsibility that DAFA disciples, not disciplines, disciples have of validating the Fa, and how priceless cultivation is. Some newer students who aren't that diligent, really do have challenges with this, and it's an objective reality, since it's human beings who cultivate after all, and overlook things that they have to deal with as a part of life in normal society. This is very strange. I try to read the context around it too, like okay. So the company is definitely seemingly connected.
On read for yourself. And from there, he continued to work with the Epoch Times on and off for about a year. And during that time, he came across an opportunity that would change the trajectory of his life going forward.
I started my own business in London, a marketing agency, eco-friendly, ethical. It was all the rage at that time.
Yeah.
Did quite well with that company. Had, you know, a bit of surplus cash. The entire Epoch Times ran off of volunteers, right? No one got paid for years in the beginning. Everything was volunteer. The printing of the paper was donations from practitioners. Practitioners paid for everything.
Awful.
And did everything for free.
So they came up with a workaround. Instead of donating 120,000 pounds directly, he would buy ad space in the newspaper for that amount. And that allowed them to scale up pretty quickly.
I put 120,000 pounds into this, and we made a big go.
That's
we got uniforms, we got distribution staff, we hired an office. It was all go.
But then something big happened.
John Tang and Stephen Gregory were just like, no, it has to be one company. And at first, I just didn't understand this, but it was all about control. Because if we had our own company, you know, then they didn't really have control of that.
Right.
And so they forced me to shut it down. They forced me to step down as CEO. And I said, well, if you do this, I'm going to lose all my money. And they didn't care. They didn't care at all.
Huh.
So I said, well, who's going to run the operation? And they said, well, can't you step down as CEO and just run it anyway? And I was like, that's insane. That's not going to work.
Jaya alleges that John Tang, who founded the original version of the Epoch Times in 2000, essentially forced him to shut down his business because they didn't have full control over it. A serious accusation, especially in hindsight. Now, considering that Tang stepped down in 2024, around the same time that the feds began investigating the Epoch Times for alleged financial misconduct.
Okay. Man, I don't need Canva. What would I use this for? I have GIMP. Isn't that
Black Friday? The mountain
Black Friday? More people are trying to steal our money. Come on. Come on. Jeez.
And I'm not saying that's suspicious, but it's kind of like when Drake said he expected the Epstein angle in the Kendrick beef. Like, why would you say that? Anyway, this was a pretty...
Okay, but I mean, come on. Like, so this is this guy's side of the story. Like, of course, he's the one sharing it. And it's his perspective. So, of course, he's going to want to make them look bad and everything, right? There are bits of truth in there for sure. But why would they want full control of this thing? How does this benefit them? It's publicity. I understand that part of it. But why do they need that? How does this benefit the leadership?
Bad time for Jai to step down from his main source of income. What followed heavily influenced his decision to become even more involved with Falun Gong.
And then the global financial crash came. My wife got a job, supported us. It was pretty grim. It was a pretty grim time. And my wife basically said, oh, look, I've had enough of this. This sucks. I want to go back to New Zealand. So I said, you know what? Yeah, go back to New Zealand. I got asked by someone in New York to come to New York and say, look, you know, I'm sorry what happened in the UK, but we believe that you can do really good here. Like, you know, under our control, you'll be looked after. So my wife went to New Zealand. I went to New York.
So that was it. His wife moved back to New Zealand and he moved to New York, where he continued working, continued to support this organization. And as you could probably guess, when he got to New York, things weren't great.
There was no leadership. No one had health insurance. There were no contracts. It's highly illegal. And I said, we're breaking a lot of labor laws here.
Yeah.
Probably some tax laws too. Everyone just sort of did what they wanted. And one of the reasons for this is
so weird. Why would you apply for a job like this that you don't, I mean, are they even getting paid? I don't understand. This is so strange.
That you have to realize, like, throughout the teachings, you have to remember that every single practitioner is being told that they are a god. You're a god. You've fallen to earth, and you need to pay off all your karma, and then you can return to your paradise. When you enlighten, you'll go to your paradise, and you'll have all your subjects, and blah blah blah. And by the way, if you're white, you'll have a white paradise. If you're Chinese, you have a Chinese paradise. It's full of Chinese people. Yeah. So there's this kind of very...
Okay, hold on. I wish you would have said that part earlier. I didn't know that all these people thought they were a god. Okay, that adds some good context to this. They all get their own paradise. Okay, fair enough. But that means there's still some sort of hierarchy. And what if you're not? Then what happens to you? I don't understand.
Clear ethnic demarcation, like race mixing was a no-no.
which is appalling. Right. The allegations of unpaid labor and exploitation to a people who are willing to do it for free because of their beliefs, even if they don't listen to direct orders. But that
okay, hold on. I think I'm piecing this together now. So all of the members, that's why the lady that start forwarding all those news articles and stuff. So they operate all these news articles. Members donate to those news articles because that's going to speak favorably of their leader. That's the leader's way of sort of like communicating with them, I assume. And they contribute money to that feeds upwards. All the unemployed staff are working there because it's going to help them, like, I don't know, get to their heaven or whatever, so they can be a god better. The money gets funneled up higher, all the way to the guy at the top, and he gets to live at his paradise in this world, right? I think it's kind of making sense now. I think that's how that's operating.
That made me wonder.
When you say that everybody kind of believes that they're their own god, and at the end you're going to have your own paradise, and it was difficult to get people to listen to orders in a hierarchical way, was that also how people viewed Lee? Or did people kind of put Lee at a pedestal above?
No, Lee.
He's above, right?
As far as they're concerned, Lee created the universe.
Okay. Yeah.
And if he said to you, see that white wall over there? That white wall isn't white, it's black. They would go, oh yes, right, yes, of course I can see it. You know, like whatever he said goes. He was infallible.
Yeah.
He had superhuman powers. Blah blah blah. Literally, his word was the word of God. The way that he'd put it was that I am the creator of the universe, but in order for me to do my work, I have to assume a human form. You'd be surprised at how many times I had disagreements with him.
Jai was already frustrated with the way the organization was run and interacting with members who would never question Lee.
When it came to promoting Falun Gong, just the practice.
Oh, sorry. So wait, hold on. I mean, the reason he's having problems, this guy's going out as a business, the other guy's going out as a cult leader, and he's the one in charge, so he doesn't need this guy because he could just replace him with someone else. Yeah, I think it all makes sense now. I wonder how much money all of these news article places collectively make. You know, how much they get from their donations. Because I feel like that's your cult fuel right there, and them all undoubtedly calling that guy God. That's obviously really bad too, right? Interesting.
I hated it. A lot of them wore these golden uniforms with red trim, and I was like, there's no way in God's green earth you're going to get me to wear one of those.
And that only got worse when there was a delay in what is known as the Fa rectification.
Dana Chang, who was the chairperson of the Epoch Times, the English Epoch Times, she was basically the direct conduit between Li Hongzhi and the paper. And she said, Masters delayed the Fa rectification. The Fa rectification means a complete reboot of the universe. Like, he was transforming the universe, getting rid of all the old forces and all the evil, and the universe would be sort of like reborn as this much more pure and kind, and without evil existence.
Right.
My point is that all practitioners, that's the end goal. It's Fa rectification now. Right? It wasn't in the beginning. It was about improving yourself. Now it was about politics. It was about the end of the world. The way they made the decisions was basically, I need to save sentient beings. That's the most important thing, is making sure everyone in the world knows what Falun Gong is, and that way we can save as many people as possible. So it's just like all the other religions, but for Falun Gong practitioners, it seemed a little bit more extreme, in that if you were doing something that was breaking the law, it didn't really matter, because what you were doing it to save sentient beings. Li Hongzhi said, he wanted practitioners to conform to mainstream society as much as possible, but
why would you want them to conform as much as possible, though? Wouldn't you want them to be? Well, okay, I guess you want them to conform so that no one goes after them, because then they keep feeding you money and stuff, right? And then if you have people, you still have power. Yeah. Okay.
Then at the same time, he wanted you to dedicate your higher life.
Yes. Right.
So it became more focused on human rights, on long-term beliefs, which is very unique for a movement like this, trying to remain in your normal life while upholding their value system. It wasn't until another conversation with Dana Chang where Jaya realized that something was really off, though.
I was angry one day and I was questioning something, and I was just like, it's just a bit frustrated. Dana Chang, she said, look, I've just spoken to Master, and he says that we need more time to say.
Okay, hold on. I just gotta say, like, so this guy's speaking to her, and this lady speaks to him. So couldn't she just say he said anything, and now it's suddenly true, and you know, their god said it, so now you have to do it. Yeah, it's a gross cult.
Save more beings. And when I heard that,
wait, what? Say it again.
He says that we need more time to save more beings. And when I heard that, alarm bells went off in my head. I was like, I've heard that before, when they predicted the end of the world would come, and then they had it. Oh no, I got the date wrong. And for some reason, this comment made my blood run cold, because something within me recognized that was a huge red flag. Only that once. It's the only time that I thought the thing was a cult.
Yeah.
I didn't even admit it was a cult until a couple of years ago. But at that point, I was like, if he's the creator of the universe, you know, he was constantly going on about how we didn't understand time. If you pressed him and said, okay, go into detail, explain that, he would say, it's too complex for you to understand with human language.
Classic.
I cannot explain it with human.
Imagine that. Like the God creator of the entire universe says, I can't explain it to you, as he's speaking perfect English, whatever, directly to your face. It's insane. It's insane, and every like cult is like this too. If it's some, you know, individual person in charge, and like you question them, and they give you some response like that, that's ridiculous. You know, I'm just like trying to like I'm thinking of this in the context of like the 48 Laws of Power by what's his name, Green. A lot of those cult leaders follow the exact same sort of things of the laws of power, you know, like, you know, in the laws of power, it's literally one of the laws is to get a cult-like following, and then to like always say less than you have to, and there's I don't know, there's something about like I swear there's something about like not making promises, right? And these people fail when it comes to making a promise about the end of the world or something, because then people realize the cracks. Also, something that is kind of cool on a separate note is just that, you know, people, you know, have their own like logic enough to be able to like, you know, they have like a conceptualization of God, right? He's like ultimately powerful and everything, right? But when God says, "Oh, it's not today, it's we need more time," like that's when people are like, "Oh, wait, God wouldn't do that," you know? That's kind of cool.
Language. I mean, what you have to remember is he doesn't speak English. The creator of the universe doesn't speak English. That's interesting. He would go on about how there was a nuclear reactor.
I think it's only interesting because like the creator of the universe, wouldn't they be able to speak English language, right? I mean, and out of any language, I mean, I don't know, they would probably do some old traditional one too, if that, right? Why would the creator of the universe be here right now with you guys? Maybe their Bible thing explains that book he had, right? But why is he here today? Why hasn't he done all this stuff already? Yeah. Off. I'm going off the rails, but you know. Anyway, let's nuclear reactor.
Found in Gabon. Like for some reason he was obsessed with this. Scientists are sort of saying this is the only natural case of nuclear fusion that has happened, but it must have happened millions of years ago. But he said, oh no, that was a previous civilization.
What?
And he sort of said, this is how everything is, but don't ask me any questions. He is a genius at creating circular arguments. The easiest example is the one about medical treatment. He goes on about how he used to heal people with his hands, and he used to heal people with illnesses in China. He says that...
Okay, I just gotta say, it's always people in suits. That's why, like, I work in an office, right? And sometimes people wear suits, and I just always, it's like, I just have like an ick for people wearing suits, because it's like, yeah, you're some weird guy trying to be like in power, and so that's why you're wearing a suit. And it's always, I always see cult leaders, and it's just like disgusting to me. It gives me the ick. That's why I wear a dress. A maiden dress. Okay.
Hands, and he used to heal people with illnesses in China. He says that Qigong is the best way to heal illnesses. And then he criticizes Western medicine, modern medicine.
Classic.
And says it's no good, which is just demonstrably not true. You know, like there's no evidence at all that backs this up. And he says, you know, look, if you're feeling ill and you feel like you need to go to the hospital, you should go to the hospital.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
After saying that Western hospitals are
ridiculous.
You know,
ridiculous.
After saying that Qigong is the best way to practice, right? He sort of says people who go to hospital and doctors and take medicine are basically bad practitioners because they don't have faith.
Which from the outside looking in,
Classic cult thing. You don't have faith. You don't have faith. That's why it didn't work. That's why you can't do this thing. You don't have faith.
Sound crazy, but you have to understand that Jaya was the odd one out.
Hold on.
The only one questioning things. His whole support system believed what they believed. A belief system that suggests that Lee is right, all-knowing, and the voice of God. A humble prophet who isn't motivated by the allure of material goods, despite the fact that he lives in his own private compound in Dragon Springs.
Dragon Springs in upstate New York.
Classic. That's another thing in the law power you should do. You don't make yourself a fortress. Because if you isolate yourself, then you're disconnected from the people, and then you lose power, and you can't do that. These cult leaders don't get it.
It's something like 400 acres, and it's full of Tang Dynasty temples and buildings. He gets driven around in a limousine. He says that he lives in a very modest room, you know, and he doesn't want it for anything. It's all it's total. I mean, he drives around in a limousine. He doesn't buy anything himself. People buy it on his behalf and give it to him. And that's the way it's always been. I think when he first got...
There's the core of the cult. There it is. Right there. There. People buy stuff for him. He created this world where he is God, and he's getting to live his heaven right now, and he just has to promise other people that they're going to have a heaven later. There's your cult. There it is.
To New York, a practitioner bought him a house in New Jersey.
Now, this was news to me. Something I hadn't seen anywhere else. You can't really find information on Dragon Springs. It's extremely private. I'm talking armed security 24/7. In 2020, ABC did a story on Falun Gong, and they tried to get onto the compound to ask questions, but were quickly turned around via police escort, which, to be fair, is not surprising. Even if
Hold on, police escort? So the police are protecting this? That's weird. Why does America allow so many cults? I feel like America needs to ban cults too, you know? Oof.
If this wasn't a secretive cult, I doubt a whole camera crew and reporter were going to be allowed on private grounds to ask interview questions. If anything, to me, it read as an attempt to make a scene and get the police called. I think it was a pretty poor attempt at showcasing the location. They could have done a little bit better in due diligence. But it did, at least, enforce the idea that if you walk up there, the police will be called. So interested to learn more, I asked Jaya if he'd ever been there.
Yeah, I hate going there because they made you work. Like, you weren't allowed to just like walk around like a tourist, and you never knew what you were going to end up doing. Some people ended up doing building work.
Oh,
some people were
classic.
I mean,
classic cult. You know, people doing all sorts of just menial, weird tasks, and for no money, I bet too, right?
I hated it because I was working 6 days a week at Epoch Times, and then every weekend there was a bus that went from New York to Dragon Springs. I didn't really want to work on my only day off, you know.
And that's wild. To work 5 days a week and then get on a bus with other practitioners, go up to Dragon Springs, and then do manual labor for your weekend. To me, it sounded like Jaya had his doubts, but it clearly wasn't enough to stop him from doing all of this.
Yeah.
So I began to wonder, like, what was the tipping point? What was the line that they crossed that finally made him leave?
And could you talk a little bit about what your breaking point was and how you separated?
So, in 2008, my father became very ill. And because we were practitioners, we all ignored it. Oh, it's just his karma, he'll get through it, blah, blah, blah. And Dad was complaining of a sore stomach. And I was like, that's weird. Why is Dad complaining about a sore stomach? Like, who gives a I thought that was strange because my dad was a very stoic person and was not the type of person to complain about anything, about any ailment that he was having. Anyway, I hadn't seen him for a few months. We had a family holiday up in Scotland, and my wife and I, we were the last to arrive, and I said to my brothers, and I said, "Where's Dad?" "Oh, he's not feeling very well. He's in his room." So I went to his room,
Oh, no,
and I
please
was
don't.
so shocked. His belly was distended like he was pregnant, and he was yellow, and I was like, his eyes were yellow, his skin was yellow. I was just like, oh my God. I was so angry at my brother. I was like, what? Why haven't you taken him to hospital? He's clearly really, really sick here. And I scolded my family. I was very angry.
Yeah.
And I drove him to hospital with my wife, and they took one look at him and said, you need to get him down. You need to get him down to London. They said, we can provide you with a helicopter, but that's going to be very expensive. You'll probably end up paying £5,000 for that. And I said, okay, well, I'll drive him down now. So I drove him down that night. We just didn't go back to the holiday home. We just went straight.
They don't have England hospitals seem like trash. If this was an American hospital, you take him there, they're going to treat him. And if they can't, then they're going to air vac him. Sure, helicopter, okay, expensive, insurance, okay. But once they take him into the care, you can't just take him back. Then, because then they would transport him by ambulance. That's so weird. So weird. Also, I also just couldn't imagine, like, something I thought of during this whole story is like, you know, if I was in this cult and you know, I've been to this the leader, the God's compound before, when I can have close contact with him, like I'm calling up the God and we're going to say, hey, fix my dad, you know, and then you get ignored, and then that's when you don't believe in the cult.
Down to London, and we admitted him on Friday night.
Good.
And then by Monday afternoon, they were telling us that he had a couple of months to live. And the whole time he refused medication. We went into a hospice, you know, for him to pass away peacefully. And he still refused medication, and he was in a lot of pain. And it was really hard to watch. And I said to the nurse, I said, look, can you do something? And they said, look, what we do in this situation is we just give them morphine until they die. And so that's what happened to him. The reaction from practitioners was quite shocking. Some were like, well, that's his karma, that's what he deserved. Some were like to me, like, why are you so upset? You shouldn't be attacked. One of the big teachings about Falun Gong is not being attached and being not emotionally moved by anything. You know,
that's another classic thing with other cults too. Like you're somehow supposed to not be sad, like when people die or something. That's insane, isn't it?
So when anything happens, you're not happy, you're not sad, you're unmoved, you're focused, you're in the present period. So I was accused of being emotionally attached, and you know, and I was like, well, excuse me, my father died. Do you mind if I'm sad for a moment? You know, he was a veteran practitioner, right? He was one of the oldest, longest running practitioners in the country, and he had done so much for Falun Gong. He had traveled around the world, challenging governments, doing human rights work, and the lack of respect for him and his work was appalling. I think like a handful of practitioners showed up to his funeral, and I was like, wow, this is unbelievable. There's got to be, you know, at least 1,000 practitioners in the UK that knew him. Everybody knew him. Robert was a force of nature.
Track your cat's litter box behavior.
I don't even have a cat. What is this?
And that was the final straw. That was like, I was like, this, I've got to get out. I've got to get out of this. And I'd just been married a year. She had quite a heavy landing into our relationship. Having my father pass away because of a cult, you know, I mean, yeah, it was difficult. And I could see that I was fully involved with the New York headquarters. And it was at that point we had a conversation, and she sort of even brought up the question of divorce.
Oh.
And I was like, okay, that's it. I'm leaving.
And he did. It took him a few months to get everything together, but he did make it back to New Zealand.
That's good.
Things weren't suddenly better. There was and still is a lot of trauma for him to unpack.
Absolutely.
And a ton of deprogramming that he needed to do in an attempt to distance himself from this organization. And he mentioned it earlier, but it wasn't until years later that he finally accepted it was a cult. But that doesn't mean he abandoned every belief he gained during that time. There's a big part of the story that we haven't explored yet. The claims the CCP is allegedly using prisoners in a multinational organ harvesting ring.
Right.
This is something that's on almost every single piece of Falun Gong collateral. This is a claim that my old professor taught me, that I was told about in the park.
I've heard that too
other
before.
Practitioners have told me about in other settings. Something that's alleged in the touring dance show Shen Yun, and something that Jaya, at least, still fully believes.
I'll tell you something that I do believe, and that's the organ harvesting. And that is a story in itself. I went all over the world. I interviewed over 400 refugees. I went undercover with the Tibetan government in exile. I shadowed their secret police. I interviewed Chinese policemen that had escaped from China because they were involved.
Okay, I just gotta say and take a stop for a second. You're shadowing the secret police. Come on, they're not letting you shadow secret police. You're some guy from some other country. Why are they letting you follow their secret police? That makes no sense at all.
In organ harvesting and didn't want to be, and so they left the country. I met a Uyghur policeman who said that he was part of a team that
I've heard it, yeah, from the Uyghur people. They were harvesting. I saw some news article about that, but I don't know. A lot of people say it. I mean, there's got to be some sort of somehow truth to it, right?
killed, executed prisoners for their organs.
Now, obviously, that's a lot. And it's something that I don't fully personally believe, and I'll get into why in just a moment. But first, I want to say how thankful I am to Jaya for sharing his story and his experiences with me. He has an incredible story and a life that's so unbelievable that if he didn't provide proof for some of the stuff, I wouldn't have believed it. Well, Jaya and I didn't have enough time to fully go in depth to talk about his investigation. He did send me a lot of the information that he had found. And I looked into the book that he had mentioned doing research for. And I'll get into all of that shortly. Because for me personally, I find the organ harvesting narrative a bit difficult to buy. And to understand why, we have to go back to my first interactions with Falun Gong. The documentary that I first watched in college was about these allegations framed as a human rights issue that no one is paying attention to. That was in 2016, and I believed that narrative until 2024 when I really started to look at the evidence and immerse myself in this organization. I think the best way to start explaining my viewpoint on this is by first explaining how the narrative came to be in the first place. So after the crackdown in 1999, Falun Gong's own media started to report that imprisoned practitioners were being harvested for their organs. A claim that, much like Julius Randle's playoff performances, never really went anywhere. Well, that is until 2006, because in March of that year, the Epoch Times, of course it was the Epoch Times, dropped what would become their most successful article to date. An article that alleged Shuja Tanthambrosis Hospital in Shenyang was harvesting the organs of Falun Gong practitioners. A claim that sparked international attention and led to the Coalition to Investigate Persecution of Falun Gong in China, or CIPFG, a non-governmental organization established by the Falun Dafa Association. The CIPFG then reached out to two Canadian human rights activists, David Kilgore and David Matas, to independently investigate the claim that they made. Now, these two are an interesting pair. Both born in Winnipeg just 2 years apart, 1941 and 1943 respectively. Both received bachelors from the University of Winnipeg in 1961 and 1963. And both...
What is it going to say? What a great picture. It's
David
crazy.
Matas, to independently investigate the claim that they made. Now, these two are an interesting pair. Both born in Winnipeg just 2 years apart, 1941 and 1943 respectively. Both received bachelors from the University of Winnipeg in 1961 and 1963. And both went on to dedicate their careers to fighting human rights violations. Together, they co-authored what would become known as the Kilgore-Matas Report that first published in 2006. Now, this thing is long. The original version is 66 pages and is still available for anybody to read online. An expanded version in 2007 brought it to around 130 pages, and it was later transformed into the 2009 book, Bloody Harvest. Now, I do have some personal speculation regarding just how independent this report was. After all, the CIPFG, which again was founded by the Falun Dafa Association, which according to IRS records receives hundreds of thousands of dollars in grants from an organization called the Friends of the Falun Gong, a nonprofit created to support the movement's causes. Friends of Falun Gong has also donated...
I mean, see, I mean, this is garbage. This is fake. Yeah. Like... I'm sure there's other places you can look into. Like, I'm sure the US has looked into this themselves, or even like other countries. And I feel like if it was actually happening, there would probably be more people that know about it, right? You wouldn't need some weird article published by some paid off people Hey, what's really funny is all these cults just end up going through just getting insane amounts of money. They're just getting paid, and it's how they like get their power. You know, that's what it all just comes from. The money. That's what they're doing it for. These people wrote these articles for money. Falun Gong. They're getting more money if they make these negative articles about China, and then they can get more members, and you know, it's like the easy thing to get behind is, oh, you don't want organ harvesting, so join us, and we're going to protest against organ harvesting, so to speak. And then that's to get the people in, and then you get it. It's crazy.
Donated tons of money to New Tang Dynasty TV, Sound of Hope, and the Epoch Times.
Yep.
And when the Davids were asked about how they were funded, this is what they had to say.
I approached this as all of you did. I mean, when this first came to me, I didn't know who Falun or what Falun Gong was, or whether this was true or not. And I slowly worked my way into it. And one of the things I realized, Chinese government, Communist Party calls Falun Gong an organization, but it's not. It's a set of exercises with a spiritual
No, but it is a group.
which anybody can do, start at any time, stop at any time, not join anything, do it on their own. Falun Gong are a group of individuals who, in some cases, have formed together to create ad hoc organizations here and there. But these organizations do not include everybody who does the practice. And every time every trip is financed differently. And the typical financing is somebody invites me who may be a Falun Gong practitioner, and that person pays, or him and his friends pay. There's no organization with a budget that's pouring out money. It doesn't exist.
Machine learning
It's diabolical.
is but businesses wonder
What is
if some
this? I don't even know what this ad's for.
At its core, though, the report made three.
You don't know a funny thing? If you click those ads, it ends up costing whoever paid for the ad money. Like, I learned that lesson. Actually, this is a total side topic. But, like, on Amazon, if you see the sponsor things, every time you click that, it loses money. Like, I had ads because I sold, like, some other products on Amazon. And if you click the button, you lose money. So, like, it's just funny to me. It's like, you could just sit there clicking over and over again, and then minus $1, minus $1, minus $1, and you could just cost some giant company, thousands of dollars. It gets up some botnet that does it or something. You could do the same thing with like YouTube. It's kind of funny. Total side topic. Random tangent. Okay.
Key allegations. One, that imprisoned Falun Gong practitioners were being harvested. Two, that practice was sanctioned or at least known about by the CCP and allowed to happen. And three, those organs were being sold to people who wanted an organ transplant. Often wealthy foreigners, as if they were getting a Turkish hair implant, which isn't off the table. And their main piece of evidence was this. According to the Kilgore-Matas report, they reviewed transplant data from before and after the 1999 crackdown. From 1994 to 1999, they estimated under 18,000 transplants would have taken place during that period. But in 2000 to 2005, that number jumped all the way to 60,000. They also pointed to hospital records and promotional material that said in 1999 only 9 liver transplants had been completed, and by 2005 that number had skyrocketed to 2,248, which, to be fair, is a bigger number.
True.
They also reported something pretty shocking, that wait times went from months and years to weeks and days, which they argued implied the existence of a live donor pool, especially when they believed that there was no significant change in donor policy, no widespread voluntary donation system, and no dramatic increase in executed prisoners. And it is important to note that China itself in 2005 admitted that most of their organ transplants came from executed prisoners, specifically death row inmates. Hong Shoufu, the then Deputy Minister of Health, admitted that about 95% of transplants came from executed prisoners. They began with the 60,000, the total number of confirmed transplants from 2000 to 2005. They then roughly estimated the number of explainable donors from executed prisoners or voluntary donation. And the number they came up with was 18,500. So they took that 60,000 and subtracted the 18,500 number to get the 41,500 unexplainable organs. Essentially meaning that if they were right, 41,500 organs would have been sourced from illegal execution. But here's the issue with that. There's a serious issue in thinking that 41,500 couldn't possibly be explained for any other reason. China's entire transplant industry grew tremendously in the early 2000s, including major healthcare reforms post-2003. And while yes, it is totally valid to question the discrepancy in that number and question the ethical sourcing of these organs, I think it's a bit irresponsible to say that the majority of them are coming from Falun Gong practitioners.
Harry Wu, a Chinese-American human rights activist who spent 19 years in Chinese labor camps, founded a research foundation and museum in DC dedicated to showcasing the horrific realities of these labor camps. And even he thought that there was no way these organ harvesting narratives were accurate.
But that report did have a genuine effect on China, at least in the short term. According to the Sydney Morning Herald, a local paper in Australia, which, you know, take that as you will, 2 hospitals apparently banned the training of Chinese surgeons due to this report. But more importantly, some governments felt they had to acknowledge these accusations, in part due to the persistence of the Davids. In September of 2006, the U.S. Committee for International Relations held a hearing titled Falun Gong, Organ Harvesting and China's Ongoing War on Human Rights, where the Davids testified. And this actually led to U.S. representatives going to that hospital twice, actually. And according to an archive statement by the U.S. Department of State, they found absolutely no evidence to corroborate these claims. They didn't believe that it was being used for anything outside of a normal public hospital. And of course, that's not completely conclusive. So I started to look at other evidence and other explanations as to what's really going on. After all, there has to be some level of truth to persecution. I've met a lot of Falun Gong members who've come here in just the last 2 years. And I want to call back to that file that Jaya sent me. It has a ton of emails and evidence for the things that he was talking about, such as a letter from European Parliament member Edward McMillan Scott requesting for the Prime Minister of Tibet to aid in Jaya's research and even give him an audience with the Dalai Lama. Which he apparently did. Some of which pertain to research he did for Ethan Gutman's 2014 book, The Slaughter, as well as some research he did prior. In the documents he sent me, he refers to something as the Singapore incident several times. From what I was able to piece together, this is in reference to an interview that he did in Singapore with somebody who claimed to have an intimate knowledge of China's alleged organ harvesting. And this was in September of 2006, just 2 months after the Kilgore Montas report. 3 years later, in 2009, this email thread was sent between Jaya and another individual. This thread references a few pretty interesting things, one of which I thought was a bit funny was this. The Journalist Corner on Fallen Info was supposed to clear up any confusion journalists may have felt about the topic of the prosecution. As you can see here, the email directly mentioned how certain articles were more effective in certain regions. One that they believed to be very effective was titled, 10 Things Obama Should Know for His Visit to China. This email literally suggested just swapping Obama's name out with any relevant politician to whatever region you happen to be. But the other and probably more interesting snippet from this email was a conversation they had in regards to Ethan Gutman's research. There was a suggestion to alter the number on Falun Dafa's website from 100,000 to something closer to 600,000. And it seems like that conversation had an effect because as of 2009, the number listed on the website is 450,000 up to 1 million. These organ harvesting claims were everywhere, and they weren't just contained to their inner circle. Most of the Falun Dafa members who I've interacted with, including my professor, have encouraged me to look into a new piece of legislation. A piece of legislation introduced by Representative Scott Perry called the Falun Gong Protection Act, as well as several petitions encouraging lawmakers to pass that bill. Here's an encounter I had in Seattle where I was asked to sign this very petition.
CCP, very, very bad.
Yeah.
Yes, it's the Falun Dafa.
Okay.
Falun Dafa, very good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hold on. What is this? What is this? Okay.
We are practitioners of Falun Gong. We are school Buddhism, like the meditation.
Yeah.
But what you will see is the severe persecution from the Chinese Communist Party, which lasted for over 20 years. So the worst thing is the live organ harvesting. That is what we are practicing signature for. Like
that's their big issue.
Take practitioners into jail and take their organ when they're still alive, and sell the organ all over the world for money. The US,
okay.
like many
But like bigger picture here, what does getting this petition signed actually do for the organization? What does it do? That's what I'm curious to know.
countries have been involved in this terrible behavior, and US has just passed this act to protect Falun Gong practitioners, like anyone involved in this
Understood, it protects them, but what does it do for like the organization in America? Does it just give the cult more safety, I guess, probably?
The harvesting trade will be punished. It has just been passed by the House, but we need more support, like the signatures, so we can go to the senator level. Yeah, so this changed a lot, but because like many practitioners just they don't know how to give up, because to follow this principle, to do a better person, what's wrong with that?
Right.
So like they are taken into jail, and many are fortunately to escape from China. Like the ladies, you can can see they've been persecuted in China, but they are fortunate to escape China here. But many people are still being persecuted like this. That's why we are here. Many of them have been there for.
Okay, but like it doesn't even make sense. Like you're not getting your organs harvested in America. They're getting harvested over there. If you care about the people over there, you need to like petition the government to go to war with China or something to fix the people, to like get them out of prison. So I don't know. It just kind of doesn't even make logical sense there either, does it?
Over many years. This is only my second year here. We are all volunteers. So.
Okay.
Yeah. They have been support with the signature.
Representative Scott Perry's actually tried to push this bill several times, 2021, 2023.
Weird. How much are they paying him?
And it leaves me wondering why. So I went deeper, and I think I may have found the answer.
Part of the reason why this organization is supported by so many politicians, and often right-leaning politicians, is because they love that their messaging is anti-China. Narratives that demonize anything seen as anti-American is obviously beneficial to that side. And that's why the Epoch Times reportedly spent millions on Facebook ads favorable to the Republican platform.
Back in the park that very first day, the woman who's teaching me the exercises brought up another persecuted group in China.
If you talk about, you can see that our officials, they talk about Tibetans, they talk about the Uyghur peoples,
right?
Like, very hard to talk about. Because the biggest group is 100 million people. It's out from people from all walks of life. Our certain minority.
The Uyghur people. In 2022, the BBC released a few articles showcasing a hacked file. This file showed more than 5,000 detained Uyghurs who were allegedly being sent to re-education camps. These articles showed satellite imagery of detention sites being built over time, and now while these are not necessarily organ harvesting rings, detention sites like this were very real and were very likely used on practitioners of Falun Gong after that crackdown. But here's the thing, in 2021, the Associated Press released an article detailing the reduction in surveillance. It also contains claims from China that those vocational camps were closed in 2019, many of which were repurposed into schools and office buildings. In 2022, the Associated Press released another article about how the treatment of people in those camps may very well have been inhumane, arguing that they could constitute as crimes against humanity. I personally believe that these likely false organ harvesting claims were originally brought up as a way to bring light to what was potentially a real violation of human rights.
Makes
and
sense.
The detention of a group of people who, while definitely for sure are a cult, followed a guy who at the time, like pre-1999, was mostly harmless. But, and there's a big but here, as people were put into these re-education camps, it sparked a movement within Falun Gong that became obsessed with revenge on the CCP. A movement that is now more aligned with misinformation and propaganda than any truth. A movement that has now become dangerous to its members with isolationist beliefs and wild denial of medicine. And that movement has branched into a multinational news program and traveling dance show. And as I think about my experiences and my conversations with members, I'm left wondering how this whole thing has changed me. If you told me a year ago that I'd be meditating in a park with people who believe that alien technology is the reason for all of human corruption, I'd probably think that, yeah, that makes some sense. But I don't think I would have held the perspective that I do right now. Going into this, I was so focused on the why, right? Like, why would somebody join a cult and what would make them stay in it? And I can't help but to think about how welcoming everybody I spoke to was. Their eagerness to invite me in, share their community, and share their struggles with me. That sense of community and purpose really binds people together, especially in this case where their purpose is this never-ending battle against the CCP. Because fear really binds people, and for the most part, practitioners...
You know, actually, that's a really good point right there. I feel like that's really what it's all about. Their enemy is the CCP. It's all focused on that. That's one of the 40 laws of power, you know? They have this specific enemy, and they're just focused on that one thing, this one, you know, group of people, the CCP itself, right? And everything's pointed against that. All the people collectively agree that that's the enemy, and so they're going to be perpetually locked in, you know? Makes sense. It makes sense. It fits the laws of power.
Are super paranoid that the CCP is watching them, that this big bad organization is constantly out to get them. That fear felt very real, and I felt it pretty much every time I interacted with this group. After all, how could I think that somebody walking behind in the park, reaching to grab a flyer and reading about these horrible things would ever think twice about it? How could you assume that the people right in front of you are wrong? To me, it became pretty clear on how people get in and why it's so difficult to leave. That being said, I will never again wake up at 7 a.m. to hold my hands above my head in a park. Never again. In the end, I did learn a lot about this group and their apparent struggles. I just left with a little bit different of an outcome than I thought I would have going into it. But who knows? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe something bigger is going on here. I guess time will tell. Anyway, that was my year. I hung out with a cult, read a book, did all the exercises, went through a bunch of archive documents, and I do think in that time I learned something. And that's to fight for what you believe is right, even if no one's listening. Well, kind of. Don't do it like these guys, but
yeah.
It's been a pretty crazy year, not just for me, for everybody. There's a lot of messed up, wild stuff happening around the globe, so I would encourage you to support organizations that you believe in. I've linked a few organizations and charities that I believe in that if you have the resources and the time, you can support yourself. I don't think any of them are cults, but you can't be sure. Also, if you've made it this far in the video, thank you. Consider subscribing, liking, sharing, or even joining the Patreon if you want to see more content.
I'm sharing the video right now.
I don't know what this next year will bring, but I'm pretty sure I won't be trying to join any cults anytime soon. See you next time.
Awesome. Okay, we don't need another ad, but that was a really good video. Like, props to that. Cool. See what some of the comments say. I'm glad you're okay, because someone who studies cult psychology in university as part of my degree, it's not recommended to actually join a cult undercover for any reason. If you think you can't get sucked into their practices, you're wrong. These cults aren't successful because people are gullible. They're successful because they're extremely good at what they do. True. You know, I'm just curious when this leader guy will end up dying. You know what I mean? They're God, and then what happens? You know, how they explain the cult after that? Is it gonna just fall apart? I don't know. Good video though. Elijah Lemard. Lemard. Yeah. Cool video. Props. Definitely check it out. I'll have it linked in the description for you guys. Yeah. I don't think I'm gonna go see their Shenyun thing now, but wow. Thanks for ever stuck through that whole video of mine. And yeah. Appreciate you watching. Have a good rest of your day. See ya.